The auditorium was alive with murmurs, a sea of glittering lights and curious eyes waiting for the next performer. Then he walked in, a boy no older than 16, his shoulders small beneath a faded shirt, his shoes worn thin, his guitar patched with tape as though it had already lived 100 battles. The audience exchanged glances, whispers cutting through the silence like knives. "What's he doing here?" someone muttered. A judge tilted her head, concerned, while another leaned back, clearly unimpressed. For a moment, it felt like the boy did not belong in this world of shining suits and polished instruments. The host asked gently, "What will you be singing?" His voice barely escaped his lips, "Hotel California." The room shifted instantly. Gasps. Eyebrows raised. A song too legendary, too powerful, too untouchable for a trembling boy with no training. Some chuckled under their breath, expecting a failure they could predict before a single note was played. He strummed the first chord. His hands shook so much the strings buzzed unevenly. A few heads turned away. But then his voice rose, cracked, unpolished, raw. Fragile, yet sharp enough to cut through the air like glass breaking in slow motion. Every note carried a history unseen, hunger, sleepless nights, the weight of dreams stitched into his fragile frame. Suddenly, the whispers stilled. The audience sat frozen, eyes fixed, hearts tightening. Judges leaned forward, caught off guard by the unexplainable pull of his voice. This was no ordinary performance. It wasn't about technical perfection. It was pain transformed into melody, hope wrapped inside brokenness. And in that moment, the boy who arrived with nothing gave the room everything. The boy's voice continued to tremble through the verses, but with every word, another layer of his life unfolded silently before the eyes of those watching. It wasn't just a song, it was a window. Behind his fragile chords lived nights of silence in a dim, one-room home, lit only by the flicker of a dying candle. His mother's hands, rough from endless sewing, worked tirelessly to patch clothes for strangers, while her son sat in a corner with that old rusted guitar his father had left behind. She would smile at him, tired yet tender, whispering, "Play, my boy. Music makes the hunger lighter." He had no lessons, no mentor, no sheet music. His teachers at school told him dreams were for children with money, not boys who smelled of dish soap and slept with an empty stomach. His classmates laughed at the taped guitar, calling it worthless. But he never stopped. At night, while others rested, he pressed his fingers against the rough strings, listening at open windows where musicians practiced. He copied what he heard, mistake by mistake, until every scar on the guitar matched a scar in his heart. The stage lights caught his face as he sang, revealing not just a boy but a survivor. His cracked, imperfect voice became a testimony. One judge whispered, almost to herself, "This isn't training. This is truth." The audience leaned closer, some unknowingly holding their breath. The broken guitar buzzed, his fingers slipped, yet his honesty filled the silence between every note. For the first time, those strangers didn't see torn shoes or a poor boy's fragile frame. They saw courage. They saw a soul refusing to be forgotten. They saw a dream bigger than poverty itself, alive, defiant, and glowing right before them. The boy's hands trembled as he reached the bridge of the song. His voice, already fragile, faltered on a high note. A sharp chord slipped under his fingers, ringing out harsh and uneven. Instantly, the atmosphere shifted, whispers crept back into the room like shadows. A man in the crowd shook his head. Someone near the back sighed, "He's too nervous, he won't finish." The boy's chest tightened. He could almost hear his classmates laughing, his teachers doubting, the echo of every voice that had ever told him he wasn't enough. For a moment, he wanted to run. Then, in the quiet of his own heart, another voice appeared, the soft memory of his mother's words, "My son, music isn't for applause. Music is prayer. Sing for love, and love will carry you." His throat burned, but he closed his eyes, pressing those words deep into his soul. With trembling courage, he drew a breath and began again. This time his voice cracked, not in weakness, but in raw emotion. It sounded like pain, like hope, like every broken night tied together with fragile faith. The imperfections became his strength. The judges, stunned, leaned forward as if afraid to miss a single syllable. One, known for her coldness, raised a hand to her lips, tears breaking loose. Another, usually harsh, whispered, "My God." The last line rang out, imperfect yet eternal, echoing across the hall. When the final chord faded, the boy dropped his gaze, ashamed of the flaws he thought had ruined it all. The silence was crushing. Then, one clap. Another. And suddenly the room erupted into thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, tears streaking their faces. He had not only sung, he had given them his soul. The judges rose slowly, as though pulled by something larger than themselves. One, her eyes shimmering with tears, spoke through a trembling voice, "Young man, tonight you didn't just perform. You healed us." The words rippled across the hall, igniting another wave of applause. Strangers clutched their hearts, some weeping openly, their faces soft with gratitude. Another judge leaned toward him, voice gentle, "Who taught you to sing with such soul?" The boy swallowed, clutching his battered guitar. "No one," he whispered. "Only my mother. She said music is prayer when words aren't enough." The crowd gasped. A woman in the front row covered her mouth, whispering, "Bless his mother." The boy's eyes glistened as he bowed his head. He wasn't chasing fame, he was carrying his mother's dream in his trembling hands. The harshest judge of them all broke protocol, stepping down from the panel. Crossing the stage, he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. His voice cracked, "Your voice may not be perfect, but your heart is. And that's greater than perfection." Backstage, an old monitor flickered, where his mother sat hidden from the world. Her hands clutched her chest, tears spilling freely as she whispered, "Your father's song lives in you." She had come quietly, too frail to join the crowd, but strong enough to witness the dream she once prayed for taking flight. On stage, the applause grew louder, waves of sound crashing like an ocean. The boy looked up, tears streaming, whispering to himself, this was for her. At that moment, the stage was no longer about judges or competition. It was a temple of love, sacrifice, and redemption, where a child's truth had lifted an entire crowd to its feet. The applause thundered on, rolling like waves that refused to fade. The boy stood frozen, tears streaming down his face, his small hands gripping the guitar as though afraid the dream might vanish if he let go. The judges bowed their heads in reverence, the audience still on their feet, but then, a movement from the farthest corner caught the boy's eye. A man had risen quietly from the shadows. His clothes were worn, his face weathered, his eyes red with unspilled tears. He looked out of place, yet something in his gaze pierced straight into the boy's heart. Slowly, as if carrying the weight of years, the man stepped forward. Gasps rippled through the audience as the boy's mother, watching backstage, stiffened in her chair. Her breath caught, her lips quivered. She knew that face, even after so long. The father who had left. The husband who had disappeared. The dreamer who had once held that very same guitar before shame drove him away. The boy froze, the world blurring. His father's voice cracked as he whispered across the silence, "That's my son, you've carried my song farther than I ever could." His hand trembled as he reached out. The boy, sobbing, dropped his guitar and ran into his father's arms. The hall erupted, cheers, cries, applause louder than any performance could deserve. Strangers embraced. The judges wiped their eyes. Even the harshest among them whispered, "We came to judge music, but tonight, music judged us." Backstage, the mother pressed her face into her hands, forgiveness washing over her like rain. The family was whole again, not perfect, not polished, but real. And as the lights dimmed, the boy no longer stood as the poor child in torn shoes. He stood as the bridge between brokenness and redemption, his song forever etched into every heart present that night.